Welcome back to the Eric Crown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice quadruple witching Friday over here from Helsinki, Finland. A lot of things to be speaking about today as we do cover up the higher term timeframes. I wanted to follow up on yesterday's short-term timeframe analysis as we did hit the short-term timeframe target to the downside, basically the bottom side of the range, but no range resolutions here. So I believe that we're probably going to see a lot of this decided today, being that it is, a major expiration for basically all major markets, and that is going to likely heavily influence Bitcoin, by extension cryptocurrency land. I was actually trying to wait to make this video because hopefully I was hoping there's going to be some short-term time frame price action, some fun stuff to get into, but unfortunately not. Perhaps I'll do some updates on Instagram later. Of course, there is, as always, a link in the description below, of which, I've just been posting a lot of content there actually recently, both trading related, like lifestyle related, like weightlifting actually as well, something else that I'm interested in, and just philosophy as well. Anyways, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, that is there for you. And without further ado, let's just jump into it right now. I want to start off with something a little bit interesting today, a little bit different today. So I wanted to talk about the overall biases here on a day like today, which is the lows are very, 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 very unlikely to be in as of right now. While Bitcoin is kind of in a sticky region, being that it is around that $20,000 prior all-time high, and also the 200 simple weekly moving average, which, everyone's got their eyes on, right? I did want to provide some color that just statistically speaking, I don't think that we're there just yet, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a bounce in between. And we'll go over bounce conditions a little bit later, although even that's looking a little bit, a little bit further away from validation at this point. Anyways, so in this case right here, I wanted to bring this chart back. This is the accumulation distribution indicator chart on the monthly specifically, and I wanted to come at it from a different angle. The angle that I wanted to come at it from is essentially judging the macro lows, of which we can see on the indicator itself. Anytime that we have hit this green horizontal bar here, the one that my cursor currently is on right now, the intersection between the indicator itself and this green horizontal bar has actually marked off basically the macro low. And just from looking at this indicator when it turns red to that macro low, we can see actually a pretty obvious relationship here. Basically about 50%, maybe even as much as 60% in this case over here, although maybe I didn't do that exactly right. Let me just go back in and maybe make this a little bit better. There we go. Actually, yeah, okay. Now that I do it, it's probably about 55. So that is more in alignment with what we have seen in the past. And as of right now, one thing that I do feel quite confident in saying is that Bitcoin does not have the low end. The question is how low does Bitcoin go? Of which, in this case, we would expect, if this relationship does continue, that the accumulation distribution indicator comes somewhere down reasonably close to this green horizontal bar right here. Let me just get rid of this bullshit because that does not matter, nor does this matter, although they are rather interesting to be looking at. But in this case, we have seen not just a relationship between the indicator and that line itself, but also, of course, the percentage drawdowns from the turning of red to that next macro low. And you can see, basically between about 50 to 55%. And so what I've done over here is I've gone ahead and I've shaved that off of our base, or, off of the area where that actually did turn red, which was back in May. And if we were to shave off about 50% off price action, that puts Bitcoin down around about $18,500. Put that number in the back of your mind's eye, because we're going to come back to that a little bit later. And if we were to go to a little bit of the upper end of that, which could be, maybe as much as 55, going off of history right here, that would put Bitcoin actually just below 17,000 bucks. So somewhere between about 16,500 to 17,000 bucks. Obviously, there's gonna be some variance in this because, we're talking about big numbers, obviously. But ultimately, I just think it's a bit of a sombering detail here, as Bitcoin does kind of dance quite close to the weekly 200 simple, which for me kind of makes things difficult to just call a major massive meltdown exactly from where we're at right now. This is just a general area where at the very least, a lot of people are going to be closing their shorts. So in this case, I want to bring back this chart over here. This chart is still very much relevant in timing this next sort of potential bounce that we could be looking for, and also kind of judging that pressure is still very much on as well, as long as these conditions are met. And this is the volatility versus stochastic momentum chart, of which this one's been treating us very, 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 very well on CME. Anyways, the signal is this: anytime we have seen daily BBWP on CME get below 10 percentile, the expansion phase from that extreme low has led to an average move of about 23.63% done over the course of just over 13 days. Also very important. Obviously, the stochastic direction has gotten it right just again, so it's probably closer to 80% now, I guess. And when we play around with the numbers here, looking at the percentage drawdowns A couple things to be aware of. Well, there's a lot of variance in these numbers, of which we've seen them go up to even as close to like 40% just a few years ago in March 2019. And so while we obviously have already played out the 23.63% move, like that was about 23,000 bucks. Well, if we were to go on the upper end of that, that would put Bitcoin, guess where? About 18,500 bucks, which is actually in alignment with that prior chart. On top of that, I would say three things about this chart. One, the timing of it. The average days is just over 13 days, and the expansion that we saw on this started on the 6th of June. So 13 days plus 6 is obviously 19, which we're currently on the 17th day of June right now. So it's reasonable to say that we're very, very close to seeing, the overwhelming majority of this move, I do believe. But that doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't come down a little bit lower, to open up next week, let's say. In fact, I kind of think that that's probably what's going to happen. We'd probably do see next week open a little bit lower and then try for a bounce. So with that in mind, two other things to be aware of right here. Daily BBWP, this is still, a strong signal until we see the BBWP itself get below the moving average and really like have a few close over closes below there, like we need to see them both getting downward slopes. But for right now, obviously the moving average is still moving up, obviously. And BBWP itself is literally at 100%, so it quite literally can't go higher than there. And it is designed mathematically to come down from these extremes, but that's just naturally going to take time. And seeing as today's Friday, so we don't get Saturday, Sunday for CME, so we have to wait until like Monday. Probably doesn't start to cool off until like midweek next week. And I think even next week, I think we have a holiday. Actually next week. And also to that point, the stochastic momentum oscillator is still having downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's closing on CME below 23,670. So today, I expect that you probably will see some whippy stuff on lower term timeframes. But barring any sort of a daily closure above this region, 23,670, pressure remains to the downside. And yeah, I would say that next week is probably likely to trade further to the downside, maybe even reaching towards the bottom end of that extreme target within this range, basically, 18.5 to 19,000 bucks or so. Anyways, now let's go over the shorter term timeframes. Obviously, yesterday we were looking for a downside move to the bottom side of the range, but we did not break the range. So that was exactly as predicted. No, bullshit. Okay, we're just looking at statistics. We're just looking at probabilities. That's it. And in this case, it did play out. So it was rather like highly probable move, to be fair. Anyways, a couple things to be aware of here on the shorter term timeframes. First and foremost, the amazing funding rate indicator is once again maybe getting it again. We're getting negative 0.018%. So shorts are paying longs in this case. It does make it a little bit more difficult to kind of get that next sort of major move to the downside in the short term here. Again, I'm going to put a lot more weight on the quad witching coming up later today. So that's going to really drive, markets in this case, I expect. But hey, if you want a little bit of short-term hopium, that'll be it right there. And then if we go back in the charts over here, do we see anything else of particular interest? I mean, is this RSI bearish or bullish? It's corrective right here. I mean, overall, long-term, it's bearish, obviously, but short-term, could we have another move up towards the top side of the short-term range, which is like, 21.9 or 22,000 bucks, definitely possible. But even in this case, nothing changes here, like at all, as long as Bitcoin's below the 382, which is 23,325, same shit as yesterday. That is to say that if Bitcoin, or as long as Bitcoin's below there, I'm not looking for any sort of potential bear trap with targets back up towards 25.5. And realistically, that would only be relevant for short and medium term timeframes. I would not be willing to call any sort of even entertain the possibility of a major reversal, unless if Bitcoin's closing like medium, preferably higher term timeframes above the 618 right here, which is 25.5. At that point, yeah, we probably do have some decent upside, somewhere around about 29, maybe even 30,000 bucks yet again, and then that would be rather interesting. But in the interim, it's a difficult range here. It's a very difficult range. Anyways, go check out stochastic momentum, as I do want to see kind of where we're at on that. And let's just go back on over here. 12-hour CME is going to be turning up. Again, this is a corrective signal with volatility cooling off of extremes, and will be remaining with upside pressure as long as Bitcoin's above 20,500. So do keep that one in mind. 6-hour is going to be showing 20,600 as well. So coming up a couple times here. Full hour, 21,000 bucks. 3 hour is going to be showing basically 21. Hourly is going to be showing and these are like all corrective signals, by the way, as well, 20,750 or so. So I'm not getting anything super obvious right there. I know that's not too helpful, but in these cases, you know, when there's not something super obvious, I mean, to me, that's a signal not to trade. Yesterday was the easy trade. We had many easy trades the day before that, the days before that as well. Well, not for me, man. I was like knocked out with fucking anesthesia getting into surgery. Hey, if you can't tell, oh my God, man. I look so ridiculous still. Oh my God. I actually look fucking insane. This is ridiculous. Holy shit. I want a refund. I want an absolute refund right now. Okay, where was I going with that? Yeah, so in this case, you know, what would constitute a break and resolution lower? Same thing as yesterday. Closure below the range lows, which is basically 20,000 bucks, or if you want to be super exact, 20,150 on CME. Then yeah, I do look for that next move down somewhere around 18,500 bucks, give or take a little bit. Who knows where some where some liquidations could potentially take us? But I suspect that you know, it'd make a lot more sense to have that move happen next week and maybe this week have a little bit of a bounce and trap a few more people, obviously, with these areas of interest to the upside in mind. So it's the same thing as far as, you know, range resolutions. Closure above about 23,325, probably looking at a move towards 24.4. Same thing above there, looking for a move towards 618. But other than that, you know, yeah, not seeing anything like super obvious here. Maybe on like an hourly, Let's see, what does the hourly have right here? A little bit of hidden bearish divergence, so maybe another swipe of the downside short term first. Buy hourly, yeah, not much here either. So, you know, in the way that I'm looking at things right now, realistically, we're probably going to see whatever traditional markets does, Bitcoin's going to do as well, as fucking usual, right? So if we actually do go check out right on over there, let's just see if there's anything obvious. Short term probably carries out a little bit more on this bounce, but other than that, I wouldn't be willing to call anything else. Long term pressure remains to the downside again, as long as daily stochastic momentum is remaining downside signals over here. The pivot is 23,670. Spot price action is 20,400. So that actually be a lot more interesting for a weekend bounce, and that probably makes a lot more sense to me as well. And if we do go reference the weekly here, which is going to be closing for CME today, that's $25,000 pivot, and spot is going to be, yeah, same thing as well. So not really much to update right there as well. What is this likely to align with? You know, probably a bounce over the weekend, and then next week, fun times begin yet again. Other than that, you know, I really want to focus on these charts over here, as I think they're a lot more sombering as far as the long term. So hopefully that was helpful. Wishing you well as always. I'll be signing off now. Take care and see you hopefully soon.